The story follows a rural police officer named Park Jun-Mo, who finds himself thrust into the dark underworld of 1990s Gangnam after he accepts an offer to work as an undercover agent to infiltrate an international drug trafficking organization. Belittled by his in-laws for being a lower-ranked cop than his wife, Yu Eui-Jeong, who is an elite member of the Seoul Metropolitan Police, Jun-Mo accepts an offer to go underground in a gang named the Gangnam Union in exchange for a massive promotion. What Jun-Mo will soon learn is that the Gangnam Union is run by a charismatic former DJ named Jung Gi-Cheul, who, along with his friends, killed the former Gangnam boss when he refused to step into the drug market, making Gi-Cheul the new boss. Unfortunately for Gi-Cheul, this attack also resulted in the death of his best friend, Kwon Tae-ho. So when Jun-Mo shows up pretending to be Kwon Tae-ho's long-lost cousin, Gi-Cheul is intrigued, and slowly but surely Jun-Mo, now going by the name Kwon Song-ho, gets pulled deeper into the gang. At first, Song-ho is treated like any other junior member and put on patrol duty. Here, he learns that most of the gang members have no idea about Gi-Cheul's drug dealings, and Jun-Mo quickly puts it together that if he is going to succeed in his mission, he needs to get close to Gi-Cheul personally. Luckily, an opportunity quickly presents itself, and Song-ho upgrades to becoming Gi-Cheul's personal bodyguard, which is where he learns about Gi-Cheul's connection to Jun-Mo's very own wife, Detective Ye-Jeong. Turns out that Gi-Cheul's first love was Ye-Jeong, whom he had gone to church with when they were teens, but he had to leave behind when his mother murdered his abusive father. To this day, Gi-Cheul wears the necklace that Ye-Jeong gave him, and, as Jun-Mo is pretty horrified to find out, regularly goes to visit Ye-Jeong's sick mother, who is permanently living at a hospital. When Gi-Cheul runs into Ye-Jeong talking with Jun-Mo, Ye-Jeong quickly makes up the story that she knows and is close to Song-ho because she lived next to him before she met Gi-Cheul in high school. Although many of the gang members are suspicious about why Jun-Mo is friends with a cop, Gi-Cheul sees it as an opportunity since he's looking for someone around him who will support him in getting closer to Ye-Jeong, wanting to help her husband in this dangerous investigation. When the other investigators find out that Gi-Cheul wants to reunite with Ye-Jeong, they encourage her to meet with Gi-Cheul and introduce Sok Do-hyung, aka the main detective running the investigation behind the scenes, as her divorced husband. While bringing Ye-Jeong into the case might help the police catch the bad guys, it's pretty devastating for Jun-Mo. At the same time, while living with the Gangnam Union gang, Jun-Mo starts to learn about the intricacies of the underground infighting. At one point, Jun-Mo is pressured by the gang to shoot an enemy gangster to prove his loyalty, but he hesitates, and So Jong-ryul, also known as Chief So, the vicious killer of Gangnam Union, ends up taking him out. But Jun-Mo does have a chance to redeem himself and prove his loyalty. You see, as he has been driving Gi-Cheul around, Jun-Mo has started to figure out that the drugs that Gi-Cheul is secretly peddling must be connected to the private fishing trips that he goes on with his two most trusted partners, Choi Ja-hung-bae and Hong Hee-sung. So when Gi-Cheul goes fishing again, Jun-Mo offers to drive and be the lookout. But once they reach the port, Gi-Cheul is betrayed, and they are attacked by a whole gang of rival gang members. With Jun-Mo and Gi-Cheul surrounded, Jun-Mo is almost killed when he blocks an attack meant for Gi-Cheul. On the brink of life and death, Jun-Mo has proved his loyalty, and he is promoted to a trusted lieutenant in the gang. But while the whole attack was a net positive for Jun-Mo, it still messed up the drug deal between Gangnam Union's Chinese suppliers and Japanese Yakuza buyers. Plus, it proved that Gi-Cheul has a traitor in his midst, and it can only be one of his closest people since they are the only ones who know the route to the fishing point. Having earned Gi-Cheul's trust, Jun-Mo pushes himself into the Gangnam Union drug business and is even sent to pick up Gi-Cheul's Chinese partner from the airport and drive her to the hotel. The Chinese partner is the intense and slightly unhinged Korean-Chinese daughter of a meth factory owner named Lee Hae-ryun. Once all three partners are together, the details of the partnership start to come to life. After the messed-up last order, the Japanese are hoping Hae-ryun to betray Gi-Cheul and find a new Korean middleman. But Hae-ryun is unsure and not ready to commit to a decision. Eventually, she makes up her mind to stay with Gi-Cheul when, in the middle of their discussion, Detective Min-gu, a Gangnam police officer who has made it his personal life mission to hunt down drug dealers, shows up and Jun-Mo fights him to save Ha-Joon from being exposed for having false documents and to protect Gi-Cheol, which is his job as a bodyguard after all. When Jun-Mo is arrested for hitting a police officer, he is ruthlessly beaten up by Detective Min-gu. This is spotted by Min-gu's boss and Jun-Mo is quickly released. It is at this point that Jun-Mo starts to fascinate Ha-Joon, who is intrigued by his stoic loyalty and good guy energy, something rare in her line of work. Although Jun-Mo's quick release from the cops was attractive to Ha-Joon, it raised suspicions for Jang-bae, who was becoming more and more convinced that Jun-Mo wasn't who he said he was. Feeling Jang-bae's eyes on his back, Jun-Mo goes to Do-hyung and Chung-sik, the chief prosecutor of the Seoul District Prosecutor's Office, who is also in charge of the investigation, and asks them to get rid of Jang-bae. Later, the police raid Jang-bae's nightclub, where they find out that he has been secretly selling Gi-Cheol's drugs on the side, which infuriates Gi-Cheol, who can't believe that Jang-bae lied to him and betrayed his trust. Meanwhile, to secure the new drug deal and become even more trusted, Jun-Mo ends up taking Ha-Joon on a tour of his childhood neighborhood. It quickly becomes obvious that Ha-Joon sincerely likes Jun-Mo, later revealing to him that her dream is to settle in Korea and live a normal life. Meanwhile, Jun-Mo is willing to do anything to get Ha-Joon to accept this deal, even almost sleeping with her. On the same day that Jun-Mo is showing Ha-Joon around Seoul, Gi-Cheol also takes Eui-Jeong out. Specifically, he takes her to the site of an upcoming city development project that he is funding, and which he hopes will be his ticket out of the criminal life. On their way back, Eui-Jeong, now fully an active part of the investigation, tells Gi-Cheol that she loves him and they kiss. Unfortunately, when the Chinese find out that someone in Korea has been selling their drugs on the side, instead of sending them all to Japan as they agreed, they start to question everything. So, when Gi-Cheol comes back to the office to show Eui-Jeong around, Gangnam Union's rival gang, named Jaegon Group, storm the Gangnam Union building, hoping to take out Gangnam Union and become the new biggest Gangnam gang, as well as win the lucrative drug deal with the Chinese. Rushing to the battlefield, Jun-Mo fights like an animal through the hordes of drugged-up gangsters, and Eui-Jeong is forced to watch as her husband slashes and hacks at the gangsters with a viciousness that she doesn't recognize, even biting one of the gang members' ears off, which sprays his face full of blood, while Eui-Jeong is horrified by the bloodbath. In the aftermath of the battle, Ha-Joon decides to go against her father and stay with Gi-Cheol, or more specifically, Jun-Mo. At the same time, the surviving members of Gangnam Union, who now own the entire Seoul south of the Han River, exact revenge on the Jaegon Group leader, Sung Ki-soo, leaving Gi-Cheol and Jun-Mo left to reorganize the Japan-China Gangnam Alliance. After some struggle with Japanese mob boss Kanemoto, Jun-Mo is shocked to learn that Oyama, a lower-ranked Yakuza member, and Gi-Cheol have secretly teamed up, and is even more surprised when he sees Kanemoto get assassinated and Oyama become the new godfather. With the new Gi-Cheol friendly Japanese gang leader and Ha-Joon ready to risk it all for love, the three sides organize one last drug deal. There is no room for any more mistakes. Throughout the series, Jun-Mo has just been hanging onto his cover by the skin of his teeth. When Gi-Cheol's personal investigator finds out about Jun-Mo's real identity from some leftover old files at the Retired Police Officers Association, Jun-Mo ends up chasing him until the investigator falls off a building. Facing the collapsed and bleeding investigator, instead of getting him help, Jun-Mo steals the evidence and runs away. With his cover safe, later, Jun-Mo joins Gi-Cheol and Eui-Jeong at a conference for the new city development that Gi-Cheol is investing in, but guess who unexpectedly shows up? It's Detective Min-gu. The last time Jun-Mo met Min-gu, the cop threatened to expose evidence that it was, in fact, Jun-Mo who killed Gi-Cheol's investigator. Now panicking, Jun-Mo urgently phones Do-hyung to ask him to get Min-gu off the case. But this doesn't stop Min-gu from telling Gi-Cheol that he can let him in on who killed the investigator if Gi-Cheol confesses to dealing drugs, putting even more pressure on Jun-Mo. Although all this violence and scheming has wreaked havoc on Jun-Mo's mental state, at least he has become the most important part of Gi-Cheol's drug business. So much so that Gi-Cheol suggests that Jun-Mo take over the drug deals in the future, since Gi-Cheol wants to be done with the criminal world and marry Eui-Jeong to fulfill his childhood dream. So, when Gi-Cheul finally goes to get the drugs off the Chinese ship, who does he bring along? Of course, Jun-Mo. Almost too easily, Gi-Cheul and Jun-Mo work together to get the 30 kilos of drugs off the Chinese boats. But just as they are driving away, suddenly a massive truck crashes into their car, totaling it and leaving the two men unconscious. We soon see that the truck was being driven by Kyung-jin, a member of Gangnam Union that we now learn has teamed up with kicked-out Jang-bae. Stealing all of their drugs, Kyung-jin leaves the men to die. Luckily, Gi-Cheul wakes up and manages to drag Jun-Mo out of the car before it explodes and kills them both. Once back at the office, Gi-Cheul sends all of his men to hunt Jang-bae down. But the men doubt Gi-Cheul, especially since most of them don't know about the drug business. With the Japanese giving Gi-Cheul 1 week to deliver the drugs, Jun-Mo turns to Ha-Reon. Against the stern advice of her father and bodyguard, Ha-Reon promises to get Jun-Mo a new shipment of drugs because she trusts him to sort out the situation. Meanwhile, back at the investigation headquarters, Jun-Mo has sent them the location of the drug factory in China, but Chung-sik has asked the Chinese and Japanese police to wait for the Korean case to fall into place so that they can attack together, despite Do-hyung begging Chung-sik to finish the investigation quicker and get Jun-Mo out of there. Unfortunately, Do-hyung is about to become more personally invested in the case when he is randomly recognized at the police station by Chief So and Bae Yong-dae, a junior member of the Gangnam Union gang who previously spotted Do-hyung walking out of the Retired Police Officers Association building. Curious and convinced that Do-hyung is connected to the rat in their midst, Chief So lures him into a trap at the Retired Police Association building. Rushing over the Retired Police Officers Association building, Jun-Mo finds Chief So with a beat-up and tied Do-hyung. Pointing a gun at him, Chief So threatens Jun-Mo to stab Do-hyung to prove that he is loyal to the gang. Between a rock and a hard place, when Jun-Mo continues to argue that he knows nothing, Chief So ruthlessly shoots Do-hyung to check Jun-Mo's reaction. His violence is rewarded when Jun-Mo freaks out, fighting Chief So and holding him down. When police backup arrives, Chief So is arrested and Do-hyung is taken to the hospital with his life hanging in the balance. Meanwhile, back at the Gangnam Union building, Gi-Cheul has found out that Jang-bae has returned and has turned all of the gang members against him. Then, as though things couldn't get any worse, Detective Min-gu shows up and arrests Gi-Cheul. Turns out, Detective Min-gu was a dirty cop from the beginning and has now teamed up with Jang-bae and Hee-sung. But although Min-gu arrests Gi-Cheul, they don't make it to the station, because on the way Jun-Mo crashes his car into the cop car and drags Gi-Cheul out of the wreckage, taking him to a safe house. Meanwhile, Do-hyung has died in the hospital, but Chung-sik keeps this information from Jun-Mo, with the thinking that since they have already set up this complex investigation and gotten this far, they have to keep going to finish it properly. Meanwhile, Jang-bae, as the new boss of Gangnam Union, meets with Ha-Reon to set up a meeting location to get the new shipment of drugs that she promised Jun-Mo. Later, it turns out that the only reason Ha-Reon was so cooperative was that Jun-Mo had asked her to help trap Jang-bae. So imagine her shock when, out of the blue, Detective Min-gu shows up at her hotel room. Sitting at the table, Detective Min-gu shows Ha-Reon a photo of Eui-Jeong and Jun-Mo from way back and explains how he found out they were actually married cops. Ha-Reon responds to this shocking news by calling Jun-Mo and asking if his feelings for her are sincere and whether she should go back to China. Jun-Mo passes her test when he suggests she goes to Hong Kong instead because it will be safer. After hearing this, Ha-Reon kills Min-gu and runs away with the help of her bodyguard. With Min-gu out of the picture, Jun-Mo and Gi-Cheul prepare to pick up the new shipment of drugs and trap Jang-bae by the harbor. But once they reach the port, it's time for Jun-Mo to finally pull the plug on the investigation, handcuffing Gi-Cheul to the steering wheel. All Gi-Cheul can do is watch as cops swarm in to arrest everyone. With Gi-Cheul's car parked out of sight of the police, he understands that if he's going to make a run for it, now is his chance. Looking around, Gi-Cheul notices that Jun-Mo has, on purpose, left the handcuff keys within reach, almost as though Jun-Mo was letting Gi-Cheul escape. One night, after the case has been closed, when Jun-Mo and Eui-Jeong get home, they see Gi-Cheul sitting at their dinner table. Gi-Cheul asks Jun-Mo why he let him escape, but Jun-Mo doesn't have an answer. Turning to Ye-Jeong, Gi-Cheul asks whether she was ever sincere with him. When Ye-Jeong replies, Gi-Cheul answers that they should be punished right now, pointing his gun at his head. Jun-Mo stops Gi-Cheul from taking his life by shooting him in the chest first. Despite Ye-Jeong's desperate attempts to save him, Gi-Cheul passes away, leaving Jun-Mo questioning whether any of it was worth it in the end.